Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Depression Vacation.
Depression Vacation.
Depression Vacation. This won't go along with our music, but Depression Vacation. It's a song that's anyway. Anyway, I'm Hal.
I'm Shannon.
And we have some stuff to talk about today, I think.
Yeah.
In general.
Lots
I guess
of stuff going on.
Yeah, like, we'll talk about mental health stuff too. But actually, we were just talking about before this. Shannon and I just completed... This is like our 6th Vidjam that we did together, I want to say.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. It was quite the interesting shoot, and this will play in a little bit more to like what I want to talk about later anyway. But like, we basically just shot the bulk of it until 2 a.m, the Thursday before it was due. I shot some stuff with Toby and Hope in a cornfield, like really close by to where we record the podcast. I don't know if I told you this, crashed the drone in the cornfield.
I saw it in the group chat. I was like, no, droney.
Yeah, well, initially I had told everybody because there was the way it crashed was the corn stalks were not level. There was like a big hill that I was taking it over that I acclimated to like the lower part of the hill. And then just when the dip went up, Droney fought several corn stalks valiantly and then lost.
Oh my gosh.
It took me forever. So thankfully, like drones, for anybody not familiar with drones, they are tethered to your cell phone for a number of reasons. Mostly so the like FAA can tell if somebody's flying a rogue drone near government outposts or airplanes. But part of the reason too that they're tethered to phones is if you crash it in some place like that, you have a flight map that'll tell you exactly how to get to it, which this was like 25 acres of cornfield. I never would have in a million years found this drone.
Holy shit.
Among like hundreds of thousands of identical corn stalks unless I had a map telling me. And even then it was like a 40-minute trek to get to where Droney had crashed, which by the way, he did fight valiantly. I
want to see the footage.
Unfortunately, it didn't record the footage of it crashing because when Droney hit the ground, the battery got dislodged.
Oh, okay.
And it needs the battery to write the final file. I kind of wish that it had been there too. But about maybe 100 yards away from where Droney actually crashed, there was like a whole portion of like down stalks. Like there were about 20 down stalks. So, like, he hit the stalks pretty hard and then bounced like another 100 feet. So whoever the farmer is who owns those corn stalks, if you're out there listening, I'm responsible. I will pay for them at $8 a stalk. But you're not listening, so that won't be an issue.
$8 a stalk? Is that how much stalks of corn cost?
I went to Stride's Orchard today just to get, like, apple cider, and they were selling corn stalks for $8 a piece. I did not buy one.
20 times. It's like $160. Hell, I don't know if I'd be paying $160.
Still cheaper than, killing a federally protected Canadian goose.
Still cheaper. I don't understand that shit.
Yeah, but the Vidjam was good. It's a lot more violent than the usual movies I make.
Yeah.
In fact, I told my mom like what the plot of the movie was this week, and she said that she was worried about me that I even came up with a plot like that. And I was like, the plot isn't really what the issue is. It's more like the unencumbered, repetitive violence over and over again.
Yeah. No, I felt that the plot was very like, I mean, it's a horror movie that if you had said to me, hey, Shannon, let's go see this movie. This is the plot. I would go see that movie. Like, because it's got a kind of like a, I don't want to ruin it, but
yeah, well,
this will come out after the.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say a couple of people. I've explained the plot to a couple of people, and they've told me that it's the same essential plot as Happy Death Day.
Okay, I guess I never saw Happy Death. I've never seen.
Me neither.
Never seen Happy Death. Words. But I was gonna say like it is like a Groundhog Day kind of situation, but like it's. Not to say it's not original, but like it's been done before, but that's totally fine. I felt like we took our own spin on it.
It incorporated the prop really well.
Right.
The prop wasn't like just so everybody out there knows who's not familiar with Vidjam. For horror Vidjam, it's a little bit different, and everybody gets assigned a different prop to make a movie. And our prop in question was an alarm clock. Which I feel like was the core of the movie. So
yeah, no, I think it definitely incorporated the prop better than like some Vidjams I've seen.
Yeah, this is a griping point with a lot of people because for better or for worse, I've seemed to become the point person for people's like complaints, concerns, and like just
Because you're so approachable.
well, just overall feedback. In fact, I was just talking with my friend Susan right before we came here because she's a first time, like this year was a first time Vidjammer. Like she did the last one for the first time as part of a really good team. They were the team that did Right is Right, which won like Audience Choice and Best New Filmmaker. And she really wants to do more of these. Like she's hooked on them. She's like, so what's the schedule like? And I'm like, well, we kind of take a break until June. But, you know, the idea of a winter Vidjam has been floated around. There just wasn't enough interest. So that's like a good example of like of feedback. People complain they didn't win enough awards, which is a constant thing. Look at me, bud. I've won like 3 awards in 4 years of doing this.
I've won no awards.
It is very, very hard. Like, especially just the way Vidjams tend to go is one movie just seems to narrowly take all the awards sometimes. Like, I've out of curiosity looked at a couple of the score sheets after the fact, like if we had a movie that swept everything. And a lot of times the scores are a lot closer than you might think. Like, between the movie that won literally everything and then like 3 other movies that scored within 2 points. So actually we're doing, for the scoring this time, we're doing honorable mentions again, I think. Because we did that for the first horror Vidjam you were in, and it kind of just gives like everybody a recognition that like, hey, not only was this movie exemplary, but like these 4 to 7 movies also scored within 3 points of them. So I think it'll be good, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the thing I wanted to talk about with regards to the Vidjam, in particular with this one, which you probably knew, like reading our group text, I had a bit of horrible anxiety like the entire first week of doing this Vidjam. Like I did no work on it. I essentially burned 7 whole days like just being nervous about writing something. And I got to the point where like the Saturday after the props were released, I was up until like 5 a.m. because I couldn't sleep at all. Like, and I have not stayed up that late since I was in my 20s probably. And so like the entire next day was just like an in and out of like taking naps and like not doing anything and having nightmares about being on the Vidjam set and having not written the script yet and having Shannon, Hope, Toby, Tori, and everybody else being angry at me.
Oh, no.
Why have you not written the script, Hal? And I would try to sneak off and write the script, but then something else would take away my attention, like a dinosaur or a flying bird.
A flying bird?
Yeah, a flying bird.
As opposed to a flightless bird?
I guess that's the standard. I could be a smartass and say an ostrich, but they're really not like the standard.
I mean, like between birds, if we're gonna get down to brass tacks, you either got a flying bird or a non-flying bird.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just. Anyway.
But yeah, that's
what I took away from that story.
Yeah, the flying birds.
Yeah.
Not Canadian geese, but that should be like just the sub name of the entire podcast is Canadian geese.
Just like incorporated into our logo.
Yeah.
That'd be funny. No, I totally get you. I was thinking about us talking about like the concept of like bouncing back after like a really bad bout of like depression or anxiety, because that's what I just went through over the last week or so. And like it can be just so freaking debilitating. Like you just don't do anything. And like I actually, like, I was talking to my therapist and I was like, I am depressed. And she was like, uh-oh. And so, like, for me, I just get overwhelmed by the idea of bouncing back and, like, getting back to, like, what I consider to be my normal routine. And so, like, I guess, like, my strategy right now is just to attack one thing at a time. Like, to get back on track with one thing at a time. But yeah, I totally get it. Like, and like with I didn't even do my Vidjam, so good for you.
So you registered for a team and you didn't finish?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We hadn't like I hadn't heard like which teams had actually finished. I know one other team didn't finish because I work with him and he straight up told me he didn't finish. But oh, that's a shame. I
had a couple ideas, but and honestly, like the engagement and then everything else, just like I'm also taking a class right now that is kicking my ass. And then I've been really depressed at work and like things like that. So like Vidjam was just like the farthest thing from my mind at that point. So, I mean, I felt really bad about it because I was excited about it. But I mean, the worst case scenario is the next time I sign up and I turn in something shitty. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I had a lot of conversations with a couple of people about this because my friend Jerry Stevens, who's also like a Vidjam all-star, he and I we always sort of chat about filmmaking things, especially around the competitions. And I was telling him like that whole week, I was like straight up, like I'm super anxious about this. Like I can't put any pen to paper. And he reiterated what I usually tell people, like, you know, if it's not fun, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. And so that was something I was thinking about for like the next one. I was like, if I can't get my anxiety in order, maybe it's a good idea to skip one of these. Because also like I did all 3 again this year, which that's like 4 or 5 years that I've done all 3 of them, which
it's a lot.
It takes a bit out of you, but also like I've always felt like I was letting on some level like the organization down if I didn't like lead by example and also do a movie. But in this case, we had 19 registrations, so like there was really no particular necessary need for doing it. But it seems like the Halloween one is the one that always seems to have the most problems every year because you have more time to think, more time to like dig yourself in an organizational hole, and then you end up doing a movie in like 2 days anyway. So
Yeah.
But like getting to mental health issues about this, this was an important like event for me because like after the sort of anxiety I had on Saturday and Sunday the first week, I decided to sort of take the dive and finally start taking anti-anxiety medication, which it was something I talked to my therapist about several weeks ago where I was telling him that like I thought I'd had ADHD for the longest time, and I took an assessment with the previous counselor, didn't reveal anything, and he was saying that it was probably more anxiety, like it can mimic the effects of ADHD because you have an inability to do anything because you're just really scared about everything. And I was talking to my friend Steve about it, and he was saying that like the core of anxiety for him is just like you don't feel safe ever. And that sort of goes back to when I was bullied as a kid. I never really felt safe at school, didn't feel necessarily safe elsewhere as a result of that. And so I think it might be entirely possible. I've been super anxious my whole life, and that's why I've been like a bad procrastinator, been bad at organizing, except when I absolutely have to. Like with the Vidjam thing, like when we rolled around to Monday, and it was very much a, if you don't get the ball rolling, you're not going to get this done. So I leaped into like survival mode and got that done. But like those are basically the only places where I've been able to function at a high intensity are like last second panic areas.
Yeah, I've always been kind of the same way. Like, for example, with my estate planning class, I have a giant project due tomorrow night. And I went to look at it this morning and subsequently, like, got overwhelmed and then didn't do anything.
Woo.
So tomorrow is going to be a hard day for me. But, like, I definitely get how you feel, like, where you don't feel motivated to do something until like it is absolutely necessary that you do it. And I'm exactly the same way. I've struggled with that like my entire life. But I will say that like for me, it's definitely anxiety and depression, but I do also have ADHD. But like once I got medicated, that was a big game changer for me. Because so the initial reason why I got medicated was for severe depression. But then once I started taking the medication, I also noticed that not only did I not want to kill myself, but also like, wow, I feel so calm right now.
Yeah.
But I still get anxiety, but it's not nearly as bad as it was like when I got medicated. So like, it's kind of funny how like you go to treat one thing and like kind of kill two birds with one stone in a way in that sense.
Yeah, it was one of the interesting things that I found out, like as because I've been debating going on like anti-anxiety medication for a little bit. It was a suggestion like a former girlfriend had that I didn't outright reject. It just seemed like it was a lot of work to like get the assessments to actually get like I'm on Zoloft right now, just day 3. So still seeing where it takes me. I feel calmer already, but I'm pretty sure that's a placebo because they say it takes 2 weeks for it to actually like kick in.
Well, if it wakes, it wakes,
Yeah, but I'm really hoping that like. So one of my best friends, she had told me that literally, like I feel like she's a very well-adjusted person. And I was saying I was thinking about going on SSRIs, and she was saying that like going on Zoloft she had the urge to like throw herself in front of a car all the time with her life, just the way things went. And Zoloft like sort of cured that. There's still a lot of obstacles involved. Yeah. And like another really good friend of mine too says that she's on Lexapro right now, and it helps, but like there's still other things that might bum you out.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of just wondering, like, if every if every bad habit I've fallen into is just a result of being super anxious, that like maybe this is finally building a bridge to like tackle them in a meaningful way. So I'm excited.
Well, and that's the big thing. I had it took me a really long time to like come to grips with the idea that I needed to be medicated. And part of the reason why I was reticent to approach any doctor about getting medicated was because as I was growing up, my mom first of all, she had me committed to a children's psychiatric ward when I was 9 years old.
Well, given what we know about your mom, I think we can understand why you would be in that position.
But, well, she had claimed that I had tried to kill myself at 9 years old, which I don't know if I would have had the, like, competency to understand what that means or to make those decisions. But also, that's neither here nor there. But, like, she was constantly trying to have me diagnosed with, like, different mental disorders, and put me on dozens of different medications. She had tried to put me on antipsychotics when I was 9. Mm-hmm. So this then led to, like, when I got older, it took me forever to go to therapy as an adult because all of my associations with therapy were a manipulation by her to control us. And then the same thing with medication. Like, I was just so scared about, like, trying to find these things on my own, especially because, like, you go to a doctor, and this happened to me when I went to the dentist, when I went to my therapist, like all these other doctors. I have no medical records for myself.
Yeah, I remember you said that last time. There are no medical records for Shannon Fields.
Right. So, I mean, they're out there, but I have no idea, like, what doctors I've been to, where to find them, like, anything like that.
For what it's worth, you're, like, way ahead of where I was at, like, what are you, 27?
26.
26.
Yeah.
Yeah, 26, like, I still was very firmly in, like, just because, like, it was a weird byproduct of, like, how I was raised. Like, the idea of going to a therapist was not acceptable, sort of. Although my parents did take me to a child psychologist when I was in 5th grade, like, which was probably about the height of the bad bullying. Like, you said before you were, like, committed for being suicidal at 9. Like, actually, I had suicidal thoughts at 9.
I mean, it's entirely possible. I mean, like, when I think back to around that time, it's so weird because any memories from before I was about 12 are, like, really just shady. Like, I can't really honestly say, like, that any of my memories before that time are entirely reliable, just because, like, of all the trauma. I don't know what I've blocked out. I don't know what I've replaced. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty about that time in my life. So with that being said, like, it's entirely possible I could have been suicidal at 9. And I didn't even know about that until I was 14. Like, I knew that I had been to the psychiatric ward, but my grandmother, we were on a road trip and she was talking to a friend of hers, and, like, she just dropped casually that I had tried to kill myself at 9 years old. And I was like, hold up, wait a second, what? And she was like, yeah, that's why you went to the hospital. And I was like, what? I don't know, what? I was pretty shook. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, well, it seems like from what you've said about your upbringing too, like, the sense of reality was always totally distorted. So it's very on brand that you wouldn't really trust any of your memories before 12, because it's sort of it's quite the thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're still going through so many things developmentally that, like, and, like, like, your brain is so amazing. Like, I mean, I don't know shit about, like, neuro whatever, but, like, I've seen a bunch of Criminal Minds, so I'm going to consider myself generally an expert on these things. But, like, you know, they're always talking about how, like, our brains are constantly adapting to traumatic situations, and they'll do amazing things to protect you from whatever you went through. So, I mean, I'm sure there's things that I don't even remember, which would probably horrify people. And me, and other people probably. Maybe it's for the best that I don't know those things, if that's the case. I don't know.
It's funny. We were just talking about this at work the other day because I won't say whether this is a former or whatever coworker, just somebody I have worked with in the past, who was not very good at the job at all, like very kind of incompetent basically with the job, but also incredibly delusional at the same time as to this person thought that they were like incredibly good at this job. Like I remember specifically one thing that took me back was this person had zero focus at the job, and that was kind of like the big issue. Like they couldn't focus on anything, so they would make mistakes all the time. And they said to somebody like right in front of me, it's like, yes, I love this job because I can just come in and be hyper focused for 3 hours. And I had to like almost not laugh. And I was like, no, you're not hyper focused at all. And it sort of plays into like, have you ever heard of Dunning-Kruger syndrome?
No.
Dunning-Kruger is like a mental situation in which somebody is so completely inept at something that the brain literally makes them think that they're a genius or significantly better than anyone else in the population at this certain task, because it would be so mentally harmful for them not to be. Like they said the good examples are like sports and the arts. Like you run into a lot of screenplay writers, for instance, or like directors who think they're the shit when in reality they're like, have some growing to do. But like so much of their identity is tied to being an artist in this case that they have to believe that they are the best because it would be mentally harmful for them not to be. And so there's like an interesting like mental displacement there where you can be so bad at something that your brain has to tell you you're the best because otherwise it would destroy you.
Oh gosh. See, now that's going to keep me up at night and wonder if that's something that's like, oh, am I not as good as I think I am? Thanks for that, Hal. I appreciate it.
Well, the interesting thing is like I've generally, I thought, been a self-aware person, but I feel like that definitely afflicted me in my 20s. Like especially with all the movie making I did at that point, like I really went into it. Some of them were very good, I thought, by today's standards. But then a lot of them had a lot of growing to do, but I still sort of pressed on. And I feel like at that point, like the idea of being a successful filmmaker was very integral to like my identity and my psyche. So I feel like I definitely played into that, at least more than I would have admitted back then. Like I wasn't totally delusional, but I forget who told me, I think it was Bill Watterson said in one of the Calvin Hobbes books that like being a successful artist requires an equal part amount of like talent and delusion because otherwise you stop trying.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think for me, like and I know we've talked about this before, where I tie so much of my identity into what I'm doing for my career. And so for the past few months, that's really affected me in the sense that like all of the sudden I had this major shift in who I was because I was no longer in the job I was before. And so that's really been a struggle for me in the sense that like, now I don't really know what I'm going to do. And it's like terrifying. And I feel like I don't know who I am if I'm not in a job that I'm doing well at and enjoy.
Yeah, I can get that.
So that's me. That's my problem.
Yeah, it's speaking like sort of merging the two things we talked about together. By the way, I didn't realize until this weekend that you knew Ryan Lockman too. He said he worked with you like when you were at your last job at the bank. Or
yes,
yeah, because he was. I took a little break from editing our Vidjam and I actually went to go shoot some, I think, pretty kick-ass drone sequences for his movie he was shooting with Sam Melville and Ashley Madavi, which unfortunately got cut because they ran out of time.
No.
But we were chatting about things, and he was looking at our pictures from when we shot on Thursday. I was like, oh, yeah, you worked with Shannon, right? I'm like, yeah, I've known her for a few years. And Ryan's like, oh, yeah, I used to work with her. So.
Oh, wow. Small world.
Yeah, Harrisburg, the greater Harrisburg area is not a huge world.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. Oh, gosh, I forgot what I was going to say. There it goes.
I guess if it comes back, it comes back. I had one more like thought about like going back to anti-anxiety medication too, is that I think part of, like I said before, like the way I was raised made me very resistant to try that, and especially therapy, which was something I'd been doing for like 5 years before I even tried meds. But I think part of it too is like in popular culture, there's a huge misrepresentation about what it means to be on like antidepressants or things like that. Like it's either poked fun about in like songs or things, or the big one I always remember is from A Beautiful Mind, where, which pretty much all of that movie is bullshit, apparently. Like, there's so much wrong with it that I've read. But, excuse me, the big thing was like he didn't want to be on antipsychotic medication, even though he completely needed it, because he said it would ruin his creativity. And so being a creative type, I've had this like false idea in my head all the time that like, if you go on anti-anxiety medication, it's going to change your personality and you won't be as creative or funny or anything like that anymore.
I think that's a really good point, too, because I actually have a lot of friends or people I've met over the years that have expressed to me that like they had been on medication and then they stopped taking the medication because they felt that the medication made them like not who they are. Like either it made them feel numb or made them like or like even with like ADHD medication or things like Ritalin or anything like that, I've heard like people say that like, oh, it makes me feel like I'm a robot, that I'm being like forcefully conformed to how everybody acts. And so that was something that also like at first when I was approaching that issue, it had really like scared me a little bit, or like, oh, they're chemically altering our brains and blah, 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 which sounds like a scary thing. But like after I like found that when like basically the whole point of like medication is to you do have some sort of imbalance in your body chemistry and things like that, and this just helps to regulate that.
Yeah.
And like there is such a thing as like a healthy balance of chemicals in your brain and things like that. So I don't want to invalidate anybody else's experience and how they feel when they're on medication, but I definitely think that for a lot of people, it is probably very necessary. Like for me, the reason why I got medicated was, or even the reason why I went back to therapy was because I was having like major suicidal thoughts. And I marched my ass to the I was at Penn State at the time, and I went to the counseling services, and I was like, I need help. And, you know, that was when they said, hey, we have a psychiatrist on hand. You should think about getting medicated. And so I was really nervous about that. And it took a lot of, you know, like kind of convincing for someone to be like, you should be medicated. And I was like, nope. But then once I did, like, it was crazy because like before, I was going through these moments where, like, I was crying all the time. Like, even when I wasn't sad, like, just crying all the time. And then after the medication kicked in, like, my emotions felt more stable. And I wasn't jumping from one emotion to the next so quickly. So that was just really life-changing for me. And, like, honestly, I've been on that medication for probably about 4 years now. And like, I'm the happiest I've ever been. I've made the healthiest decisions I've ever made.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. Like, well, and then once I got medicated, that's when I recognized that like there were things in my life that I was incredibly unhappy about and that were contributing to how I was feeling, as well as like the body chemical things that were going wrong with me. So like it put me in the right headspace to be able to tackle those things and be able to like make decisions without being afraid of them.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm hoping this will just sort of lead me, is like, you know, a situation where I feel like this was a big thing I talked with my therapist about this week. Was a previous girlfriend had said I was very avoidant, which is 100% true, with a lot of things that you would notice around me. And I think the avoidance, this was something actually my therapist, I said this in passing, and he wouldn't let it go this week, which was very useful because he kept thinking that was an interesting choice. And then like, I'm hoping that like why I'm avoidant is because I'm constantly anxious about things, and then they pile up more and you get more anxious about them. So hopefully like getting on SSRIs will just like make me less anxious to the point where I can just do a couple of tasks and then be less nervous about everything else later on. So
yeah, I agree. Like, so for me, I very much love the idea of completing tasks. It gives me a lot of joy when I finish something. But if there's a lot of things I have to do at one time, like I get that executive dysfunction and I just can't do it. So like yesterday I had this moment where like I was leaving work and I was like, oh my gosh, the dishes need to get done. The litter boxes need to be emptied out. I need to make dinner tonight. Like all of those things need to happen. And so I was like, well, here's the thing. let's think about this logically. You know, dinner is going to take a long time to cook, and the dishes that you need for dinner are currently clean. So get dinner in the oven. That's an hour and a half, and then you can use that time to do the other two things. Well, for the litter boxes, I was like, well, they really actually need to be deep cleaned. So I don't actually need to like scoop them. All I have to do is empty them into the trash, rinse them out, and put new litter in. But to be able to rinse them out, I need the dishes done to get into the sink. So it was like, okay, it's not that these things all need to be done at the same time. It's that these things need to be done in a certain order to make sure that everything gets accomplished.
And so, that works out pretty well for you.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just like, and I feel that way with like work too, because I'll see like 30 emails in my work email, and I'll get overwhelmed. But then I think to myself, well, listen, you cannot do 30 things at once. The best thing to do is start with an email, finish that email, and then move on to the next task. Like whatever it is, just do it in order. So I think like I definitely approach a lot of things like when I start to feel overwhelmed in like pieces. And that's really helpful. Like even with like one task, if I have to do the dishes and I really don't want to, I'll say to myself, okay, do one dish. Just do a dish. And then usually once I finish that dish, I'm like, well, I'm already doing the dishes. So that
got to keep this productivity going.
Right. I'm like, I did a dish. There's no like my hands are already wet. The sponge is already spongy. Like I'm already standing here. I might as well do another dish. And then I just keep doing that till they're done.
Yeah, I think that's a very useful way to like get tasks done when you have hundreds of them to just.
Yeah. Or even like if it's a task that you just hate to do. You know, like with laundry, I'll tell them I do the same thing with like when I need to fold it because, you know, that takes 7 to 8 business days usually. So I'll be like, okay, just fold one piece of clothing or hang one piece of clothing and put it in the closet. And then once I do that one piece of clothing, I'm like, I'm already standing where the clean clothes are. I might as well just keep doing that.
It's so funny because this made me think of.
I trick myself.
Tricking yourself is very. I read that like rephrasing things or just like sort of repositioning things in your brain can sometimes work that way. Like I read a lot of like things about health and how to eat healthier, and a lot of them have suggested like instead of framing like, oh, I can't eat that, like if it's pizza or ice cream or something like that, you can always reframe it as I don't do that because it's more empowering to your brain. It makes it your choice as opposed to something that's being like. I can't means this is something that's being forced upon you against your will. I don't is you taking control of the situation and making the rules for yourself.
Yeah, I can see that. I think also like I've been using I've said this before where I've used Noom for like for losing weight and stuff like that, which is one of the things that kind of fell off my radar over the last week or two was like I really like wasn't keeping track of what I was eating. I wasn't sticking to my routine. I haven't been to the gym. But the other reason why I hadn't been to the gym was because I took a really long break from the gym in the last year or so. And then when I did start going back to the gym at the beginning of September, I was like, I can do all the things that I was doing before I took a break from the gym. And I got the most horrible shin splints over the last 2 weeks. And I like literally, when was this? Last Saturday, I went to the Out of Darkness walk in Harrisburg for the American Foundation for Suicide
Prevention.
I
saw pictures for that you posted.
Yeah, it was, I like to do that. Last couple of years they did it virtually, but the first year I did it was, I did it in person. And like, I just love, it's not a very long walk. That's the first thing I like about it is because like literally you go like around the Senators Stadium, like you walk around and across the riverfront and then you cross the walking bridge and then go like a couple blocks down and you come back. The whole thing is like less than 3 miles.
Yeah, I was going to say, my weekly run I do, we start right at the Harvey Taylor Bridge. We run to and around City Island and back there, and that's usually exactly a 5K, like 3.1.
Yeah.
So yours is probably like 2.5 miles?
Yeah, it was something like that. So, you know, I go and I'm like, okay, it's just like less than a 3 mile walk. And then it's not even a run. Like it's literally, we were all just walking.
Just a leisurely stroll.
Yeah, basically. And I went up the stairs at City Island, and all of a sudden my shin splints started going, and I was no way, I haven't even started this walk yet. So I learned a very hard lesson over the last couple of weeks. So I have to ease myself back into it. I guess I just have this like delusion of I'm not as out of shape as I think, but I am.
Yeah.
So,
you have Dunning-Kruger for about the level of physical strength.
Yeah. Basically, because on the elliptical, I like to do the elliptical instead of like running, because running sucks.
Yeah.
And so
can confirm.
I was on the elliptical and I was like, okay, usually I do a mile on the elliptical. Usually it takes me about 8 minutes before I took the break. And so when I got back on the elliptical, I did like a 9-minute mile on the elliptical, and I was like, this is great. And then
that's fucking fantastic.
Well, I mean, it's just on the elliptical. It's not like an actual 9-minute mile.
That's true too.
So I don't want to give myself too much credit, but
it's still pretty good. Like if I do treadmill running, like usually 9:40 miles are the best I do. So yeah, kudos.
Yeah. Well, then I was like, oh shit, I feel terrible afterward. So I need to learn how to stretch and like ease myself back into things.
Yeah, stretching is very important. That's something I've lost a lot of flexibility of in the last like 2 years. Because like I know we talked about exercise. Was it last time? Yeah, we talked about exercise last time a little bit. And I used to be in like super, super good shape for the longest time. And like just, I don't know, the last 2 years just took a toll like everybody else, and lost a lot of flexibility because I used to be super, super flexible. And now it's not quite the same anymore. Can't quite do the same workouts as I used to.
Yeah.
I have to be very careful with running in particular, because if I run too much, I hurt my knees and things like that in ways that just takes me too long to come back from. Like I have a nice every weekish run I do with my friend Rachel, which it's pretty leisurely. We do like 12-minute miles for like 3 miles, chat about how our lives are going. And it's usually pretty nice in that respect. In fact, I checked my Strava and I've only done 75 miles running so far this year, which is by far the least amount I've ever done. Like last year, I barely got to 200 miles running, which just came on New Year's Eve. I ran 2 more miles just to get to 201. And that was the least I'd run in ever, too. So I'm in worse shape than I think I am as well. Mm. So
yeah,
it's a struggle to get back there.
Well, now that I'm getting married, like now I'm like, oh gosh, I have a wedding to do and like be in my, because I want to be my best version of myself, like when I, walk down the aisle.
That's very sweet. I like that idea.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that I'm like not taking on, but like doing the healthier option for myself. But I have been, since the engagement, I have, as happy as I am, and I love Ryan so much. I've been pretty stressed, just because like I'm the major breadwinner between the two of us. And so like now it's real that, we'll be, our own family, and I will have to support both of us financially. And so that has just been a lot of a weight on me, which, I mean, it of all the weights to have, it's not like, like I generally at 26, I consider myself to be very successful.
Awesome.
But, I have a way to go in terms of like where I need to be financially to take care of the two of us, comfortably. And I think I've mentioned before that like I will not like adopt a child before being in a position where they will never want for anything.
I think that's very fair.
Well, and especially with the way I grew up, like there were times when I was a kid, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have food, we didn't have
basic staples of being a person at this point.
Yeah. I mean, there were, if it hadn't been for my grandparents, we would have been homeless a couple of times. We had to move in with my grandparents a couple of times, which I know was very hard on, especially after my grandmother died. We moved in with my grandfather once, and like, I mean, my mom also took a lot of advantage of him financially. So it got to the point where like if I needed something for school, I would ask her for it. I would say like, hey, I need lunch money. I need X amount of dollars to go on a field trip or something like that. But then she would turn around and ask my grandfather for the money. And so it got to the point where I didn't feel comfortable asking her for anything because I knew it wasn't coming from her and it was coming from him. And that was I mean, he was retired, like he deserved his money, and like he had already set up things for after he passed away for us. And so I've never really forgiven her for how much she took advantage of him, over the years. And so like it got to the point where I just went without. Like, I never asked for anything anymore. I just let myself be in this position. And, you know, when you're 15, 16 years old, like, that's a hard thing to sacrifice.
Very big defense mechanism popping up, like, just
Yeah.
as a result of that. But that's it's like, I like that you said too that you know, you want to wait till your child will wait for nothing before you have or adopt a child. And I remember I had an ex-girlfriend once who told me that, like, you know, people become parents theoretically to, like, sort of fix the wrongs that their parents did while raising them. And she also said that, like, people become therapists to be able to fix the same problems that they endured when they were kids as well. And I like that idea-wise. Like, you try to, like, change the cycle with your next go around.
Yeah, change the generational trauma. I mean, I just, like, I have this, I don't know if I call it a fear because I would never put myself in this position to begin with. But, like, I was talking to Ryan because Ryan's been working with the East Pennsboro High School marching band.
I was going to say, he strikes me as a band teacher.
Well, technically, he's a tech for them. And he's doing a really great job, and I'm really proud of him. Just because he does have difficulties with, like, full-time work and that kind of thing. He is on disability. So that's why, like, between the two of us, I'm the breadwinner. So, you know, I was talking to him and I said, you know, when we went to away football games or anything like that, or any football games when I was in marching band, I wouldn't eat. Like, she wouldn't give me anything to go eat at the football game. And I was like, listen, when we have a kid, that kid is getting, like, $50 every time they go to a football game or something. Not 50, that's a little much, but
you could buy all the nachos with $50.
Right? But the whole thing was, like, when I adopt, like, I want my kid to have a normal freaking life. That's what I want for them. Like, when I grew up, I never got to go to any school trips. I never got to go to, I never got to get yearbooks or anything like that. I think the one year I got a yearbook, my grandfather paid for it. Like, I just didn't really get to enjoy the things that most people get to enjoy in high school in terms of, like, because we didn't have any money. But, like, I honestly, like, when I adopt a kid, like, I want to give them everything that they want not, like, every single thing, but, like, if they're doing a play, right? And the play has a T-shirt. I want them to have that T-shirt. Like, I want them to have normalcy. And that's the big thing I've struggled with, too, is, like, the major imposter syndrome that I have right now of being engaged. Because I've never had a normal life, and now I'm doing things that normal people do. And, like, I'm planning my wedding, and it's going to be, like, my mom's second wedding, like, we always kind of, like, adapted to whatever the situation was. So we've never had, like, a normal kind of how you would imagine life going. We always just kind of were like, well, we can't afford this, so we're going to do it this way. Like, she made her own wedding cake, and we did our own decorating, and her wedding was a potluck. And, like, yeah, it's, like, stuff like that. And, like, I want to have a wedding where I pay for things, and I have a DJ and a bar and good food for everybody. Like, I want to buy a nice wedding dress, which I did, by the way.
Awesome. Cannot wait to see it.
Oh, gosh. It's gorgeous. And, like, I was also going to tell you that, like, when I was trying on wedding dresses, I, like, didn't want to offend the dresses. It's weird.
You didn't want to disappoint the dresser.
No, because, like, the lady was like, okay, what do you like about it? And I was like, oh, I like that it's pretty. And she was like, okay, what do you don't like about it? And I'm like, the dress is right here. Like, oh my God, you want me to shit talk this thing while it's on me? It might strangle me. And she's like, dresses don't have feelings. And I'm like, okay, your logic is not helping.
I love it. Like, it's so funny to see polite people in situations like that. Like, the show I've been obsessed with recently is, I don't know if you've ever heard of Joe Pera Talks With You. He's also a stand-up comedian that has, like, a pretty fresh act, essentially. Like, he's my age, and his whole thing is that he kind of, all of his mannerisms, his speech, his walking, and his interests are all akin to, like, an 80-year-old man. And he's hilarious. Like, his observations are very funny, I think. And in the very first episode of his show, somebody accidentally, there's a house across the street for sale from him, and the sign gets knocked down, and somebody accidentally puts it up on his lawn instead. So a family comes to see his house, and his response is kind of like, well, it would be impolite to throw them out. And so he goes through like a whole hour of showing them his house and being judged by these people. And at the end, they're like, oh yeah, here's what we think is fair. Let us know. And then at the end of the episode, he sees them again. He's like, hey, I have a confession to make. Oh, we bought the house across the street. Yeah, we called and found out your house wasn't for sale. So that was weird.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, and like when I think back to, so like, for example, my mom also made her own wedding dress.
Was it a good wedding dress or?
So their wedding, oh my God. See, this is so cringy. Their wedding for my stepdad was like Civil War themed. Because they did reenactments.
Okay,
and
it's getting better.
They reenacted on the Confederate side.
No!
And my stepdad, like, he used to, one time, so we were living in low-income housing at one point, like in this apartment complex where, like, very, very poor people live. And he decided to put a Confederate flag outside of our apartment.
Oh, Lord.
And so there was a wide variety of people who lived in this place. And like, I was like, we are living in low income housing and these people are scary and they also generally have guns and like maybe putting a Confederate flag outside the apartment also, first of all, is a bad idea. And second of all, does not reflect the beliefs of everyone in this house.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, it was just so cringy. So like all of the wedding photos, like he's wearing a Confederate soldier's uniform. She's wearing like a, you know, lady dress thing.
Well, I mean, aside from all the other optics, you chose the losing side to declare your love for each other. That's not a good portent for the rest of the wedding.
They got divorced later.
Of course. After 4 years?
After 10. Well, no.
So 2.5 civil wars they were able to go through.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just a really weird situation. And, I mean, their whole relationship was silly in general. But, well, because my mom, when they met, my mom was engaged to somebody else. And then she was like, our house is haunted. And I was like, what? And there's a point to this story. So she calls this like amateur ghost investigation crew to come check out our house. And so they show up and they meet like the leader of this group who then my mother starts cheating on her fiance with this guy.
The ghost hunter?
The ghost hunter.
Ooh.
And so...
From one niche interest to another.
Right, yeah. So then... the fiance found out and dumped my mom, and then his wife found out and dumped my stepdad, and then they like got together and like got married and stuff. So I always told my mom, I'm like, listen, he cheated on his wife with you. He is going to cheat on you eventually. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. A year or two ago, he cheated on her with someone younger. But he also cheated on her like during the relationship at one point. But like they made up this whole story about how like he only did it so that he could get the person he cheated on my mom with pregnant so that they could then take the baby and have another baby.
Shannon, the story keeps getting worse the more that you tell it.
It is much worse. It is.
Like, I keep thinking it's going to get better, and it's just like...
No, it never does. It never does until, like... once I've gotten my own spin-off series, you see, that's when things get better.
Shannon Fields makes things worse, the spin-off series.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was just, like, a really weird situation. But, like, and so... Oh, also, they got remarried when I was, like, 16. And I was dating this guy at the time who I lost my virginity to eventually. And she, like, insisted that he be in the wedding party. And I was like, Mom, I'm 16, dating a guy from Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, who is in special needs classes. I don't think this is a long-term kind of thing.
This person is going to be in your photos forever.
I told her, I was like, he shouldn't be in the wedding party. Like, we should just, like... keep him out. He is on all the wedding photos, all of them. And that is a little bit of, well, for a while when they were still together, I was like, that's hilarious. But now they're divorced. So, but yeah, wild stories from Shannon.
Yeah, let's just blow up everything. So
Yeah.
the whole thing was just a big dumpster fire.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, like, I was telling my therapist about this, like, before I start, like, talking about it to other people, it feels like it happened to an entirely different person.
That's that's probably another coping mechanism too.
Yeah.
I would assume it's just like, sometimes you, I don't know, depending on the way you phrase things, it's like you're not talking to yourself as a person. Like this is what my therapist told me, like, is I used to have a huge problem with just talking down to myself all the time. And he said it was something like that where like, you're not actually identifying yourself as a person in that situation, which is why I would say, speak to myself in the third person too, be like, oh, Hal, fuck off, or something like that. It's like, no, you're talking to yourself like you're not an actual person. So
Yeah. Well, and what I see a lot right now is like when people are like, would you say that to another person? And then if the answer is no, maybe don't say that thing to yourself.
yeah, there's a lot of layers to it, and it'll take a while to unpack. But thankfully, I think I have a good therapist. I know I have one. I don't know why I said I think, but and he said something like interesting. I want to sort of like not necessarily close with, but get in before the end of this during our last session. Because we were talking, a lot of our podcast specifically is talking about all of our past traumas and things like that, and trying to understand the why. And he told me at the end of our session that he, in his years as a therapist, he thinks the why is an overrated part of the entire healing process. Like, it's definitely a part, and not to minimize anybody's like why they do things or how trauma has affected their lives, because it's an integral piece to the puzzle. But he said a lot of like, especially like self-love and self-therapizing and like Instagram therapists are more interested in the like why and the traumas and things like that, and not as much as like what can you do right now to try to make it better. And that was such an interesting thought, because it's like he said, it's against what conventional like, niche online therapists will, like Instagram therapists would say in that situation. And I don't know, it felt very empowering. Like it's sort of like you are not tethered to your past kind of thing. Like you have the power to actually affect change in your life right now if you try. Like understanding the why is a part of that, but it's not the only part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think over the years I have tried to kind of sort out the like, why would these things happen to me? Like, why does my mother act the way she does? Why did she make the decisions that she made? And, unpacking that is like, it can be a good idea, but overall, I'm never really going to know the answer. Because I know that or at least I very much hope that a lot of the decisions that she made in life were not to, like, I feel like she genuinely thought she was doing the right thing. Whether it was the right thing for her or the right thing for us, I can't really say. But it's kind of like, I think most... And not that she's a villain, but most villains feel like they're doing the right thing. Oh,
yeah. Like you never run into a villain who thinks that they're the actual villain. So.
Right. So it's a complicated feeling when, you have this anger and you have this like resentment towards your childhood, but the person who caused that doesn't really understand the impact, and they don't understand... I don't know what capability she would have to understand what I went through and how her decisions affected me. And when I think about it, like over the years, like people are like, oh, you should try to reconnect, or you should write her a letter, or you should call her or sit her down and tell her what she did and all those things. But when it comes down to it, first of all, she doesn't understand. If she did, she wouldn't have done it. And it would just be like, I don't think it would be a productive conversation if it were to happen. And even if we did have that conversation, and even if she did pretend like she understood, like, I don't think things would change.
Sounds like a good recipe for just not doing it then. Right,
exactly. So, that being said, like going back and hashing over like, oh, why did this happen? have approached it more as like you said, what can I do right now? And so that has really, when I decided to cut her out of my life, it came down to the questions of like, do I want my abuser at my wedding or my graduation or to be around my children someday? And the answer was no.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that I'm doing right now to heal and to move forward, is saying that, yes, I want to get married and I want to have a family, but this is what I'm going to do to make sure that I don't pass the trauma to the next person, and also ensure that I myself will be happy.
I think that those are all incredibly fair things. Like, and it's things you want to like get the best handle, especially before you have kids. Like, because kids expose like the best and the worst of you at the same time. Like, just because you're so like, especially in the early years, like raising them, you don't have your guards up quite the same way you do with some of your other behavior. Like, there are a lot, and it's interesting to see like with some of my parents too, like there are a lot of, especially now that we're all grown up, like they're more well adjusted in a lot of ways, but like when we were younger kids, it was just more difficult to keep those guards up in a couple of ways, and they just expose the worst parts of your psyche. So you got to make sure you got a good partner working with you too.
Yeah.
Which seems like Ryan's cool. I would marry Ryan.
You would marry Ryan?
I would absolutely marry Ryan, just for the benefits, for which there are none for me. So.
No, not really. But he cooks, he cleans. He's funny.
Oh, I love Ryan. I'm so bummed that we didn't like get him into the last two Vidjam movies.
He had band stuff.
Yeah.
Well, for this last one.
He probably, if I had to guess, I didn't really assign any roles to anybody until like we actually got the people in there, because like didn't really write it until we had everybody. I would have assumed that he probably would have been the first person killed in the movie. That role. I think Jerome was the name of the person.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I can see it. There was my friends and I, we have our own friend group, and we've done like PowerPoint parties, and one of the first ones I did was like my friends in order of how likely it is that they'll be murdered. And he was the second to least likely. I said like maybe accidentally murdered. But yeah, he's just too nice.
It's funny. He was also the first person murdered in The Dentist, our Vidjam movie for last year.
Yeah.
He didn't last very long in that movie. He was knifed with a toothbrush. So
poor guy.
Yeah, but I guess that's just a final word too. Like, our Vidjam of Horror screening is this weekend, or not this weekend. It's going to be next weekend,
right?
Which will probably be when this episode goes out, because we finally learned how to publish podcast episodes. So we're a week behind because we have one episode still to release before you hear this one.
Yeah.
But this should come out, I guess, the week of Vidjam. So if anybody's listening, come out to the screening on October 23rd at the Midtown Cinema, where you'll see our movie, which I'm really happy about. Have you watched it yet?
I did. I was really excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's really good. Some people in our group have not watched it. They want to see it for the first time on the big screen. So,
well, unfortunately, the screening is on the same day as my engagement party, and that was unintentional. But
yeah, I actually have to work that day.
No.
I originally had to work at 10:30 day, but I found somebody to switch with me, so I only have to work till 8. So I'll catch the back half of the screening. It's going to be long too, folks. It's going to be like. I calculated that if every team who registered had submitted a 15-minute movie, it would have been a 4.5-hour screening.
Yikes.
But now I know that you didn't finish. I know one other person didn't finish, so we can get it down to a more manageable 4-hour screening.
Hooray!
Yeah. These are always the big ones. Like, I didn't get to actually go, unfortunately, to the one last year. I went to the pregame, but not like the actual screening. But the year before and the year before that, they were about 3.5 to 4 hours long, which is why we do an intermission for them too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I'm really excited. It seems like everybody put together really good movies. I've been chatting with a lot of the other submitters. Wallace McKelvey said that he was very proud of his movie and his stills looked awesome. Jerry, who also had Toby in his movie. His movies are always really good. And he feels really good about his as well. Some first-time submitters, too. There's a guy I went to high school with who I hadn't really talked to in about 19 years, who caught wind of, like, the Vidjams through another mutual friend of ours and did one with her. So
nice.
It's always cool to get new blood in with people. So.
Yeah. I'll try again next time.
Yeah, if you ever need any help, I'm a friend.
Okay.
But I'm the kind of person who will take 2 hours in the middle of your last editing day to go shoot drone footage for somebody that doesn't make their final movie.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about the Vidjam community too, is that like everybody, it's always a friendly competition.
Oh yeah, not a lot of drama.
The people who cause drama tend to not do it anymore. They're
Yeah.
welcome to if you're out there listening and you know who you are, but they just won't. So, but anyway, this has been an interesting episode talking
Yes.
about anxiety, like identity, and all that fun stuff. So, and what the environment you'd want to raise your kids would be. So, but anyway, thank you for coming by for Depression Vacation. I've been Hal.
I've been Shannon.
And we'll catch you the next time we feel like recording an episode when hooefully my cold will be gone.
Hooray!
Yay! Have a great week, everybody.